All right, my young Padawan of economics, let's dive into a concept with a bit of vintage flair. Supply creates its own demand, originally theorized by the French economist Jean-Baptiste Say, hence it's often called Say's law. Imagine you've baked a ton of cookies, more than your family and friends can eat in a month. Now you're a cookie supplier. According to Say, just by creating or supplying these delicious cookies, you're also sparking the desire or demand for them. This is kind of like saying, hey, if I make it, people will want it. To put it in more playful terms, suppose you've been binging on superhero movies. You become so inspired that you invent a gadget that turns you invisible. Now, nobody knew they needed this gadget until you, the tech whiz, created it. As soon as you show it off, people realize, hey, I want one of those. By bringing the gadget into existence, you've created a demand for something that didn't exist before. Say's idea boils down to the belief that by companies and individuals producing goods and services, they are inherently generating demand because they are creating income for themselves, which they can then spend on other goods and services. The money you make from selling your cookies or your new gadget will be spent in the economy, thereby stimulating more demand elsewhere. But remember, this isn't a magic spell. I can't suddenly invent a two-headed unicorn and expect everyone to whip out their wallets. Only products that people find valuable will actually create demand. So practical application kind of matters. Keep your cookies tasty and your gadgets cool, and you might just prove Mr. Say right. So next time you think about creating something, remember, you might just be drumming up a shopping frenzy without even knowing it. Let the cookie baking and gadget inventing adventures commence. All right, my young economic Padawan, let's break down the concept of borrow now, tax later, with a bit of flair and fun. Imagine you're throwing a massive birthday party, but you don't have enough cash right now. None of your friends want to miss the bash, so they chip in to cover the expenses up front. That's essentially what borrowing is. You're getting the money you need right now, with the promise that you'll pay it back later. Now, in the world of government finance, it works similarly. When a government wants to fund big projects like building roads, hospitals, or even throwing a nationwide party, metaphorically speaking, but doesn't have the money in the treasury, they have a couple of options. They could either tax people right away to get the money, which no one is really happy about, or they could borrow the money by issuing bonds. So, they go for this borrowing option because it's like saying, we'll pay for the party now and worry about it later. But here's where it gets interesting and a bit funny if you think about it. Just like in your party example, borrowing now involves a catch. The government has to repay what it borrows with interest. So when later comes, it means they either have to increase taxes, reduce spending on other things, or borrow even more. It's like waking up after the fantastic party to a hefty bill and realizing you have to mow lawns, or in the government's case, collect taxes, for the next several months to pay it off. The good part, or bad depending on your point of view, is that this later can sometimes be a far-off future. Governments can kick the can down the road so that the paying back part potentially becomes a job for future politicians and taxpayers. It's like inviting future guests from birthday parties you haven't even planned yet to help foot today's bill. So borrow now, tax later is essentially a strategy where the government gets the funds it needs immediately by borrowing, with the plan to raise taxes or find other methods to pay back that borrowed money in the future. It's a balancing act between addressing today's needs and handling tomorrow's bills. And just like any party, if you borrow too much and throw parties every weekend, sooner or later, you'll have to face the music, or in this case, the tax collector. So, it works, but within limits. Got it? It's less about the instant fun and more about planning to deal with future consequences. Kind of like promising your parents you'll ace your exams after a party, but you better actually do it.